tomorrow morning and email them and say, why are you being so political? So they need to get twice as much email and twice as many phone calls from people who think that it's a good thing that they've stood up. So who's going to email or call the Synod office tomorrow? Come on, I want to see more hands. Number 4, always take the side of those who have been sidelined. Now, Lema hit this out of the park, so I don't need to say a lot about this. What I will say is that I know from personal experience that this is really hard. But this is where God is always found. Jesus says, just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me. Standing with those who have been sidelined, standing with those who are on the margins, standing with those who are poor, standing with those who are part of marginalized communities, that's standing right there, side by side with Jesus. That's where Jesus is. That's where God is. And you can't open a page of Scripture without seeing that. But it's hard. And I'll tell you why it's hard. Because our friends are all standing over on the other side of the line. You know, in Tucson, for example, we have a new police chief. And all accounts are, he's a great guy. He's openly gay. He's married. I mean, not that that makes you a good guy, but I mean, he's a good guy. You know, there's a picture of him when he was a police chief in Richmond, California, standing at a Black Lives Matter protest, actually holding a Black Lives Matter sign. This is a guy who came in committed to community policing, committed to doing the right thing. He's known actually in around the country, and he goes around and he teaches other police forces about how to do community policing and create good relationships with folks. He's part of my circle of friends. You know, those of us who are like the heads of organizations and elected officials and the police chief, like, we all go to the same parties. We go to the same fundraising events. After the election, we had an event at the YWCA because we had seen a spike in hate crimes in our town. We're seeing it around the country, and so we put on our Facebook page, you know, if you've been a victim of anything like this, private message us and let us know. Within 24 hours, we had dozens of reports from all over the city. All different communities. Immigrants, Black folks, LGBTQ folks, disabled people, elderly people, women. So we had a public forum just to talk about how can we help each other? How can we respond if we see something like this happening? We thought maybe there'd be 50 or 75 people that came. There were 500. The police chief came and the mayor came. And one of the things that we asked them at that public forum that night, there was so much powerful energy in that room. We said, you know, we're afraid that with all this anti-immigrant, anti-refugee rhetoric, living on the border, in a community where there are so many immigrants, we said to the police chief and to the mayor, we said, we're afraid that our neighbors are going to be targeted, and we want to know that you will stand with this community and that you will not cooperate with the federal government if they come in and start rounding up immigrants. That's what we demanded of them. And you know what they said? We will not be agents of the federal government. We are the city of Tucson. We are the Tucson Police Department. We are accountable to this community. We will not cooperate. But you know what? A month later, there was a demonstration. right downtown in Tucson. It was a little bit more than a month later, actually. I take that back because it was 2 weeks after the Women's March in January. On January, what was it, January 20th, there were 10,000 people who crammed the streets of downtown Tucson for the Women's March. Not a single arrest. I mean, like, it wasn't a march, okay? Because there were 10,000 people. Have you been to downtown Tucson? Like, everybody went to downtown Tucson and stood there. There were so many people, every street was blocked off for hours. Not a single arrest. The police were like, hey, they were wearing pink hats. 2 weeks later, there was an immigration march. Within minutes of that march starting, there were dozens of police cars. And they were forcing people off the street. There were Facebook videos from every angle showing police pushing, shoving old brown women onto the ground and pepper spraying them. Turning them over, handcuffing them, and dragging them off to jail. I was infuriated. I called my police chief. He didn't answer. So I called his assistant chief, and I said, Carla, I don't understand this. There were 10,000 people who blocked streets in Tucson 2 weeks ago, and your officers were wearing pink pussy hats. But yesterday, you were shoving little grandmas on the ground? Well, they were blocking traffic, and it wasn't safe, and I said, well, why don't you just divert the traffic? Well, we don't really have enough police officers to do that. I said, I'm sorry, I watched the videos. You had 24 police cars there within seconds. How come you couldn't have 24 police cars within seconds on the diversion patrol? I don't know if I lost friends. We went to court with those protesters. We went to press conferences with those protesters. We stood side by side with them because the police were wrong. But you know where Jesus was? He was with those little nanas on the ground. He was not standing with my chief of police friend. This is hard work. It strains the things that bind our nice white communities together. But that's where Jesus is. Just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me. To me. That's where Jesus is. Number 5. Amplify the voices that have not been heard, because those are the folks through whom God speaks most often. Last night we talked about Micah. You know, doing this work isn't always about standing up in the front of the room and giving a big speech about this stuff. You know, think about in your community, in your congregation. More often than not, it's about making sure that people who have the microphone are the people who are most effective. It's about giving voice, giving people who have a voice the opportunity to use that voice. One of my good friends said to me, Kelly, when you're with people of color, talk less and listen more. When you're with white people, speak up. That's a pretty good rule of thumb. Here's what you can do. Find out who in your community is already doing this work. Who's already doing this justice work? There are lots of organizations. Go ask them how you can help. Have your congregation ask how you can help, how you can partner. You don't have to do this on your own. In fact, you probably shouldn't. Go talk to those communities that are already doing it. And use your privilege to make space for others. Ask things like, so how come there aren't any young people on this committee when it's about planning the youth trip? And number 6, never forget who you are. Never forget. I love the way Paul writes letters to all those churches. He starts out, for example, in Philemon. He says, this letter's from Paul, a prisoner of Christ Jesus, and Timothy, our dear brother, to Philemon, our dear friend and co-worker, to Apphia, our sister, to Archippus, our fellow soldier, and to the church in your house. I love the way he names a woman. Like that just didn't happen back then. You are seen. You matter. You are somebody. And you should be the bravest person on the planet. Because you know nothing will stop God's mission. You should be the bravest person on the planet. I think one of the reasons that everybody's so afraid is because we grew up with this idea about how the world works. You know, this is the survival of the fittest idea, right? We have this idea that there are scarce resources and we have to be, you know, we have to get them all or somebody else is going to come eat us. Well, that's actually not the way the world evolved. My son, who is an engineer and a scientist, and who I don't understand most of the time, he came home from school one day, his junior year in high school, and he was telling me about how evolution actually works. And he used this example. That's a shark in the middle of this picture up here. This is a shark. And all those little fish around it, those are pilot fish. Those pilot fish eat the gunk off the shark's body, and the shark never eats them. They need each other. My son Ethan was explaining to me that actually, here's who evolved. People who could learn how to get along with others. The world is not full of scarce resources. The world is full of abundance. This is affirmed again and again and again. And we live in this kind of fearful place that if we speak up, if we take action, that people will get mad, that people will leave, that, well, yeah, okay. But is that really the worst thing that could happen? Most of those people were mean. Don't forget who you are and who you belong to. Here's what you can do. Just make a list of everything that you have to lose. If you actually follow God into a life of justice making, if you go home and you begin leading your congregation, your circle, your community into a more just, seeking, peace-loving, equitable world. What's the worst thing that could happen? What's the worst thing that could happen? They'll kill you? Well, then what? Where are you going to go? Where are you going to go? Heaven. What's the worst thing that could happen? You end up in heaven? What's wrong with us? And some of you probably need to go home and find some new friends. I'm serious. You need to probably go home and find some people who can be your collaborators and co-conspirators. You need to find people who are willing to take action and be on the front lines and who can help you feel brave, or at least who won't make you feel like you're crazy. I want to leave you with a couple things to think about. Where are you being called to stir up trouble as part of God's mission to love, save, and bless the world? Are you ready? If not, who can you ask for help and support? And how can you help and support your fellow troublemakers back home? Before this day ends, I want to challenge you to take each of those questions and spend some time really thinking about them and write down the answers. I got an email from one of you last night thanking me for, I don't know, daring to come and talk about this stuff. And here's what I want to let you know. I was scared. I'm scared every single day. And every single day I think, God, am I doing it right? I'm not sure if I know what I'm doing. I feel like I'm going to say the wrong thing. I'm not sure if what I'm doing makes a difference. Oh well, what else am I going to do? It has been such a pleasure to be with the women of the ELCA. It's been 7 years since I've been with you, with this church. You have helped me heal. You have helped me experience God. The stories that you've told me in the last 12 hours about your family members, about your congregations, about the struggles that you face, have helped me see God. So thank you for that, women of the ELCA. And God bless.